Okay, so Foundations of Go. This is a new series, so let's talk about why are we doing Foundations of Go. Predominant reason is actually we want to ensure a good balance of content for folks who come to these meetups. For a long time, we've sort of thought there's a bit of a gap here, and we've had good, strong feedback as well that there's a bit of a gap for those people who are perhaps newcomers to the language. As I said, it surprises me that there's 50% of people every single month for whom it's their first meetup. So as I said, there's probably a relatively large number of people within there who are relatively new to Go as well. So we're looking to cater for those folks as well as the folks who maybe they've actually been doing Go since the language came out. Never hurts to have a refresher, actually, if you're experienced in the language already. We're also looking to use this as a way of encouraging new speakers as well. So perhaps you've already done a bit of Go yourself and you think, actually, you know what, I'd really like to get up and spend 5 minutes talking about maps, or talking about methods, or how I use my favorite editor, whatever it might be. And just to also encourage a different sorts of discussion amongst Gophers at the break and afterwards as well. So apologies, we've got a line that's cutting almost exactly through the last bullet point there, so I'll make sure I read that one out. Very simple formats. Every single meetup from now onwards until the idea burns out or we come up with something better or whatever, it's going to be roughly 4 5-minute topics. It's always going to be the first session of the evening as well. That way everybody's fresh, they're tuned in, the speakers are tuned in as well. You have to put up with me today, I'm afraid. And it's going to be predominantly live coding and demos as well, really to make it interesting instead of flicking through boring slides like this. There will be lots of links to further material as well. So if you don't catch something, don't worry about it. We will now publish our slides after every single meetup and make a point of doing so, not least so that you can click through to our sponsors, anybody who might be hiring as well. So yeah, please submit suggestions for any topics you'd like to hear. This is, again, just a rough idea of any topics that you might like to. Thank you to those people who have already submitted suggestions as well. We're going to try and get a bit of a balance so we have some newcomer appropriate topics as well as some slightly more advanced topics in the Foundations of Go section. But please tell us if we're not getting the balance right in terms of content as well. And again, I'm still asking for people to come and present. So please, this is a really good way. 5 minutes, that's all it'll take for you to get through and talk a bit about maps. Ready? Yeah. Then let's go for it. Thank you. So, bear with the format. It's work in progress, as are the jokes. But let's kick off with what I'm calling orientation here. And these are going to be probably totally out of order again. I haven't thought massively, or we have not thought massively about the order yet. This has all just been a bit, okay, let's see what might work next month. So orientation. So first things first, and I'm going to pick up Casey on this point. The language is called Go, not Golang. So this is just a bit of a running joke amongst folks who have used the language for a bit. Golang is just a website. So if you are programming in Go, that's exactly what you're doing. You're a Go programmer, you program in Go, etc., etc. So the best place to start is, ironically, the golang.org website. This gets you started from everything, downloading Go, little playground there over on the left-hand side, which we'll come to in a second. Documentation, help, links to the blog. This is a really good starting point if you've never actually used the language in the first place. Second, get signed up to the Twitter, get subscribed to the Twitter feed as well. There's all the interesting blog announcements, maybe security announcements that come out via the Twitter feed as well. That's an awesome place. And you can see as a responsible London Gopher, the Sherlock Gopher is already subscribed to this Twitter feed here. Third step, the blog. Now this is where there is actually really good quality content on the Go blog. Whether it be talking about new language features that are coming out or new packages that the Go Cloud team might have released recently, whatever it might be, the blog is definitely worth following. They don't publish very often. I think on average you might see at most 6 posts a year. But the posts are quality, and there's everything from the history of the language itself to new features that are coming out. So definitely worth subscribing to as well. The Go Tour, if you've never programmed in Go before, is always a good place to point somebody If you've never programmed at all, it might be a slightly high bar to start with, and we'll come to that in just a second. But generally, it's an extremely good interactive way of getting started with the language, and that's pretty important, right? You can go to a website, you can start on the language, click through it, get some feedback immediately without having to install anything, without having to install an editor and all of that. So really good starting point. Again, if you've got friends who are thinking about it, these are sort of links that you'd be wanting to send them to. You might even buy a real book, for heaven's sake. And this is a book that is slightly more appropriate for someone who might not have programmed very much or at all before. There is a promo code on this, which is 4242 Gophers. So if you are thinking about buying a book or gifting it to somebody for Christmas, you can buy it in hard copy, or there are the electronic copies available. So 42 Gophers is the promo code for this. I won't be publishing that on the slide, so those people who are here this evening have the advantage of the promo code. And on YouTube channel, I guess. Get connected with other Gophers. The Golang Nuts mailing list, Gophers Slack, Go Forum, and Stack Overflow are really good ways of just asking questions. In fact, they are the encouraged way of people asking questions as well, because the Go GitHub issue tracker is not for questions. These are the predominant points here. The Gophers Slack, if you are already a member of Slack, you will hopefully be a member of the London channel as well, which is where most of the folks in here are members as well. And even there, people will be asking questions, asking for tips on where to look for certain things. But there's whole loads of channels in the Go for Slack there that are more specific to your question, potentially. I've not used the Go Forum myself. I don't really use Stack Overflow much, so feedback, please, on how often those are used relative to Slack these days, because that sort of feels like it sees the highest traffic amongst all of these. And then collect stickers. That's just something that all Gophers tend to do. And this is Antonio's laptop that doesn't have any more room on it. Okay, so the Go Playground. And this is where I'm going to have to switch to mirror displays now, because otherwise I'm going to get stuck. Okay, so the Go Playground, as I said, are we working there? Great. You saw that snippet on the Golang website, and the area, excuse me, on the left-hand side of the website, which is an interactive part of the website, where you can just click and have a play around with the language itself. That's exactly what the, I'm going to have to, oh dear. Bear with me 1 second. See if I can, so here is the Golang website. I'm going to have to work out how best to actually flick through the link, flick between the tabs here. This is the Go website, as we covered, the Go blog, the tour of Go, which is entirely interactive in the way that it works. So all of these runnable examples here give you immediate feedback. You see the output down at the bottom here. Roger's book. So the Go Playground is an excellent place to start. And as I said, it's fully interactive in terms of what you can get started on. And what we'll start to do here is actually just create ourselves a very simple example. So this will be familiar to a number of folks, but for everybody else, we're just going to have a go at Hello London Gophers. And we're just going to run this as well. Okay, so...
Could you zoom the page a bit?
Of course. How's that doing there? Better? Great. Okay, so what have we got here? This is our first Go program, and the first thing to point out is that if you've never programmed any Go code before, Go code is organized into packages. That is just the unit of reuse, one of the main units of reuse within Go code. And if you want to have something that you can run, package main is what you call your package, and that's how we've declared the package at the top here. Okay, that's why we're then able to click run, and then we have this output down the bottom here. If you have a package main, that just allows you to run that code, and we'll see how you can then either compile that to an executable or just run it, much like we're doing in the playground here a bit later on. Within package main, you need to declare one function, which is the main function, and we've done just that here. The body is indicated by the braces, the curly braces as well, and there's just a single line in our body here, which is the built-in function print line. Now, it's not often that people actually use the built-in function print line. Instead, they tend to use slightly more elaborate packages. And that's what we're going to do in just a second. Just make sure I keep up with my notes here. So as I said, package is the unit of interchange of, or the unit, excuse me, of reuse of code in Go. So let's actually use a package here. So as folks would be slightly more familiar with, we're going to import the fumpt package and instead use fumpt.println hello LondonGophers. So that's going to just give us exactly the same output, unsurprisingly, just based on the name of the function that we've actually used there. But here what we're doing is the identifier fmt is now usable within our package main here because we've imported it. So when you see an import statement like that, what follows is what's called the import path. Now here there is just one element in the path. It's generally slash separated. So for example, something slash, that won't actually compile, but this is what the import path actually would look like. It's a slash separated path. And it's the last element of the path that generally is the package name. And that package name then becomes, as you've seen here, the means by which you can then use something within that package. Okay, so with the Go code as well, there is a rather idiomatic way of things being formatted, unlike in other languages where you can perhaps specify what your preference would be, and whether the curly brace starts on the next line or not. In Go, there is one way to format your code, and that is a good thing. I'm seeing some shaking of heads in the audience. Trust me, it's the right way. So let's just run, and you see there's actually an error here. And this is because Go is actually quite prescriptive in the way that it wants your code to be declared and laid out. So let's just fix that here, but also let's just not have a space between here. Helpfully within the Go playground, there's also this format button here, which allows you to reformat your code. So that way, it makes it really easy for someone who's new to the language to actually look at some code and go, oh, this is laid out exactly as I expected here. The braces are on exactly the same line. There's this consistent spacing between everything. It's easy to write code, and it's even easier to then read it because it's formatted in a consistent way. There's a very helpful imports checkbox here, which I'll just do a quick demo of. As I said, package is the element, is the level of reuse, if you like, between Go code, and you have to import a package in order to be able to use something within it. Sometimes it gets a bit cumbersome actually having to remember to actually or write the import statement at the top there. So very helpfully on the playground at least, and there are means of which you can do this within your editor, you can actually automatically have things be imported, and hence the format package is then imported here at the top. Cool. So let's just do one more import here, and we're going to import the math package here. And we're just going to tweak our use here. Hello, we're going to say LondonGophers like to eat. And then we're going to do math.py. The jokes get better. So this is a slightly different function that we've used within the fumpt package here. And we'll come on to how you can actually start to navigate around the documentation of various packages a bit later on. Cool, so I think I'm all done on my very simple example here. One thing to note is that the package names as they've been imported here, the import paths as well, are typically all lowercase. And that is just a bit of a standard that folks have landed on because there's then no question about whether it should be uppercase or lowercase or any sort of mixed case. There have been some rather nightmare scenarios where there have been things uppercase before that then changed to lowercase. Nice simple rule, just keep it all lowercase. I can see some people holding their heads at this point. Okay, so I think at this point here what I will do is switch back to the slides. Excuse me. Switch on to talk about the Go command. So we were just playing around in the Go playground there, which is entirely online. So nothing particularly surprising here. Oh, this is horrendously slow, isn't it? Yeah, horrendously small. Let's just fix this. Sorry, folks. This is Linux. I don't have an option. I think it's because it's on the display. Let's just cut to the slides for 1 second here. So the playground was great, but it is just a single file, and clearly you want to be able to actually define more files, define packages, excuse me, that contain more than just one file. So we can do better, because packages can contain multiple files, and they are all, just as long as they declare the same package at the top, part of the same package. And also we want to be able to create multiple packages as well. I'm just going to use a very simple text editor for today, nothing too complicated beyond that. There are plenty. We'll have this as a later episode as well. If someone would like to talk about their favorite editor, VS Code, whatever it might be, I think that's a really good sort of topic that we could have for a quick 5-minute section here, where you can just give pointers to people on what the best things about that editor are, just to encourage folks to try something different. There's everything from fully fledged IDEs to VS Code, mouse-based, visual, to terminal, VI, whatever your preference might be. But ultimately, all of these are actually using the Go tool under the hood. So what is the Go tool? Well, it's part of something that you will get if you download the package from the Go website. You can have a look at the wiki page there, as I've just included a link there, for suggestions on editors and plugins as well. So anyone who has already programmed in Go will know that they use the Go tool to do everything from building to looking at documentation to installing, whatever it might be. So this is all happening behind the scenes on the Go website in the playground. That's kind of happening for you away on some server. But what we're actually going to do is quickly see if we can... Apologies, folks. This is not too big, but we'll get there. So we're just going to... I've got a rough directory here, which I call my scratchpad, which is where I just create some rough code. And what I'm going to do within here is recreate exactly the same example that we had on the Go playground. So I'm going to call the directory blah because it doesn't actually matter. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to create ourselves, and we'll come on to see modules a bit later on. So just don't worry about what modules are now. They're sort of a higher level of reuse than packages. All we're going to do is you just create yourself a directory, and then within that directory you just say go mod init, and then you just give it some path. You could even just have go mod init mod, for example. You can call whatever you like at this point. So then I'm going to use my favorite editor, which is VI, which is terminal based, and so we're just going to have exactly the same here. So we're going to declare our func main. We're going to have func.printf, gophers like to eat math.py. Okay? So you didn't see me actually type those imports. Again, this is something that within my editor, I have something called a tool called Go Imports. Again, that's a really good suggestion for a 5-minute primer that someone might give to everybody else. So why is Go Imports good? Well, it saves you having to do that sort of repetitive typing at the top there. So this looks similar enough to what we had before. So I've saved my file there. And let's just clear the screen here. Excuse me. The Go command is already available in my path here. So again, if you want any details about getting set up, this is all on the website. So Go help will just give you a bit of a primer, exactly sort of a précis of which you just saw in the slides there. So let's actually just start by building what it is we've... Okay, that seems to have actually worked. So what have we got? Now we've got an executable that's in the same directory here, which has a name. We just take a look at our module file here, that is identical to the last part of the path, that is the module path, which is just mod. So that's why it's called mod here. So let's just run mod. Gophers like tweet py. That looks fun too. You also saw go run. Well, let's just assume we don't want to have an executable kicking around on disk. So instead we can just say go run dot, and go run is very similar in that it will actually build this program behind the scenes, but it's not going to actually place it anywhere that you can necessarily see. And dot here is just a way of saying the current package, i.e. within the directory that I'm currently in. So exactly the same output, unsurprisingly there. You could, if you wanted to, say go install. And if you read up on the documentation, there are ways in which you can direct where you want the Go tool to install the executable. That for Go build, it put in the same directory here. So as we'll come on to a second, and there's plenty of other stuff there, I've included a link in the slides as to what the Go tool can do. There's plenty of favorites here, and everybody has favorites, whether it be Go doc, for example, where we can look at the funct package. All of this you can start to do from the command line. but you might be thinking to yourself, oh, this is a bit 1980s, having to do everything via the command line. Don't worry, there are other tools that sort of wrap these tools, but all I'm trying to get across to you is that the Go tool is really at the heart of all of these tools here. So let's just cut back to these slides here. The online docs here, I think, if I... Yep, so these are the online docs for the Go tool itself. That's, again, this is linked to from the slide here. Instead of just looking through the terminal for the output of these are all hyperlinked, so much more useful if you're looking to just click through and see what's actually going on. These are the editors, IDEs, plugins on the wiki page. The Go wiki is also a fantastic place to actually start looking for answers to questions that may be FAQs that you may have, or if there's something missing from the wiki, you can say, hey, I'd really like to see X in the wiki. Okay. I think I've skipped past one now. Fantastic. No, so we're under commentary and documentation and naming. So we used the FUMP package in our very simple example there, but you're probably asking yourself, if you've never used the FUMP package before, well, what else is in the FUMP package? And this is where you saw a hint of it on the, within my terminal there. You can start to look at documentation for any package that you might have heard about, or maybe you've not even heard about the package, and you actually just want to start having a browse around. So let's just do that. So this is where the FUMP package, and you can see up here it's godoc.org. This is a hosted version of all of the package documentation that is publicly accessible on the internet, hosted on things like GitHub, etc. The FUMP package is somewhat special in that you don't actually need to do anything to use the FUMP package, and there are plenty of others like that. They are called the standard library. They're just available to you if you start using Go. So the package FUMP here, it always has a bit of a, tells you how to import that package at the top, and then it gives you a one-liner on what that package actually does, and then there's a whole load of stuff that follows. Large preamble in the case of FUMP here, and then you get down to the index, which is where you can actually start to click around and say, oh, that sounds like an interesting function. You can clearly search within the page as well, but also a very convenient thing is to be able to just hit the F key whilst you're on the godoc.org page. And let's just say, for example, we wanted to immediately jump to the printf function. You can just start typing and then be taken to the documentation there. So nice, clear explanation of what printf actually does in this situation. And as you can see, there's actually a sort of an implicit referral to higher up in the documentation here, where we get an explanation for, we just have a look at what this %v actually means, right? Because that's not actually explained in the function. So again, the documentation is going to cover that entirely. So the FUMP package all the way up at the top, there we go, an explanation of what %v means in this situation. So the documentation, particularly for the Go standard library, and just a reminder, the FUMP package falls into the standard library, is one of the key things that is just amazing about the Go programming language. So how do we actually write good documentation? Well, that's kind of where, here's the links to godoc, for example, and the go space doc command line is just a subcommand of the Go tool, as we saw before. So, like lots of languages, Go uses comments attached to or within code in order to effectively self-document. Line comments are the most typical, and godoc, the tool as we saw, automatically extracts those comments for you. And if you actually go to godoc.org, it's performing exactly the same sort of extraction, but it's presenting it to you as an HTML web page. So all of these things start from the same principle, again, of the Go tool being able to do these things programmatically for you. It's just that they build up in many layers, where you've got godoc.org, which has got these hyperlinked, rather nicely rendered web pages, to just the godoc tool at the beginning, which is just, as you saw here, it's just a whole load of output in the terminal, which is not particularly helpful if that's not your cup of tea. So as you start to browse around, have a look through the standard library for examples of what good documentation looked like. Because if you've looked at any standard library documentation, chances are you thought to yourself, this is really useful because it explains to me really concisely and precisely what it is I'm looking to do. Packages should have a package comment at the top, and as you saw that for the FUMP package, very simple one-liner, what does this package actually do? And so that package, as I said, is an element, it's a level of reuse, and it's clearly related things that go into that same package there. As we saw, we had in our code here, let's just go back to it. When we're using within the funct package printf here, the funct, as we said, by convention is all lowercase. The P is capitalized. And that's absolutely essential. If you're looking to make something available to somebody who wants to import your package, the first letter has to be capitalized. Again, all this stuff is covered very nice and clearly in the links that I'll send across. No sort of special formatting required, as you saw. One of the outputs for Go documentation is to the terminal. So if you've got a whole load of stars, equal signs, creating dividers, it will just look absolutely horrendous. Don't worry about that too much, because godoc.org, you can see that it actually does a pretty good job of rendering your documentation in a nice, clearly laid out, well-styled way. So don't worry about that too much. Effective Go here is an excellent place. Let's just quickly jump across to that. If you haven't seen Effective Go before, it's a really good primer on what the standard way of doing things within the Go programming language is. What is the idiomatic way of writing a comment, for example? And you can see there's all these sections down here. It explains as well why the Go format is the one way to do things too. So finally, naming, just as we said, funct, okay, that doesn't actually mean anything to me either, but there's some historic significance to that name. Coming up with good package names and indeed good functions names is absolutely critical, because it makes it easier to then understand what a package might actually do, and it also makes it quick and easy to actually use as well. So just a bit of a primer here on that. You also want to avoid naming stutter, so if we have a package called buff.io, for example, you wouldn't want to have to say buff.io.buffreader, because guess what? Buff standing for buffer, okay, that's fine. IO, input output, okay, so that's a nice short, concise name to give to that package. But if we then called something a buff reader, that's going to be a bit of a stutter there. So by convention, you're just going to try and keep things nice and short there, because everybody's going to be using it as buff.io.something when they import it into their package. So thinking about these names is really hard, but at the same time, if you actually get to something that is right, it then actually makes it a lot more easy and fluid for somebody to use your package as well. As we said, by convention, packages are given lowercase single word names. Again, it's got to be something that is really snappy, that people go, oh, I've got to use the strings package, because guess what? The strings package is all about strings. Again, there's another link to Effective Go here. Okay, I've talked absolutely enough, and so I'm going to stop talking and hand over to our speakers for the evening. I've already repeated about 5 times that we're looking for speakers. We definitely want some speakers and ideas, feedback on what this Foundations of Go series could look like, should like, so please come and grab us, send us an email, send us a Slack message, help shape what this is actually going to look like over the coming months, and as I said, so that we can actually give a good balanced level of content to everyone who's coming on these evenings.